on to our first story this evening on India Global. Canada's year-long foreign interference probe came to an end with the report alleging that India and China meddled in the country's past two elections. That's the allegation that's been levelled by Ottawa. India has rejected all these insinuations that have been levelled by a Canadian Commission report of interference in Toronto's elections by certain foreign governments. The External Affairs Ministry also hit back at Canada's interference in India's internal matters. And India stated that it is in fact Ottawa that has been consistently interfering in India's internal matters. This has also created an environment of major distrust, with illegal migration and organized criminal activities being facilitated by Canada. The report also found that Prime Minister Trudeau's government was insufficiently transparent about foreign interference in Canadian politics and sometimes took too long to act against attempts to meddle in the country's last two general elections. All right, let's get in my colleague Mohammad Ghazali for the very latest on this. Ghazali, this is yet another instance of the India-Canada relationship getting impacted due to false and untrue claims being made by Ottawa.
Yes, certainly. A report which could have just been released, or the contents of which could have addressed the issues of Canadian politics and society, has somewhere yet again hit India on the wrong side, because the report suggests that how India after China has been a very active country. It also touches upon the issue of those 6 Indian diplomats who were expelled from Canada, or what India claimed that India has recalled them, but Canada keeps claiming that they were expelled and calls them agents. Also, it talks about that how India has been in touch with the diaspora community, threatening them, controlling them. These kind of words have been used in that Commission report, and India outrightly rejects the entire allegations or this entire baseless report which accuses India of meddling into the affairs of Canada. Rather, Indian External Affairs Ministry issued a statement saying it is rather Canada which is interfering in India's internal politics, or say the social dynamics, considering what is happening with the issue of Khalistan or those people who are getting immigration or moving to Canada. India believes that this entire atmosphere has led to illegal immigration. Also, how Canada has been harboring those anti-India elements despite repeated reminders. So, this entire report, which could have been issued to address the issues back in Canada, the Canadian government yet again chooses to include or to allege India's involvement in their internal affairs.
All right, Mohammad Ghazali, appreciate you giving us a lowdown of all that's happened between India and Canada in the last 24 hours. All right, let's quickly now turn our attention to the big questions that we are asking on the fresh showdown that's taken place between India and Canada. All right, the first big question that we are putting, and we'll try and get those answers from our panelists, is when will Canada, let's put out those questions, when will Canada give proof when it comes to backing some of these allegations that it has made regarding India? The second key question that we are asking is that who really interfered, because there are allegations being made both by India as well as Canada, and very credible allegations have been made by India that it's in fact Canada that has interfered in its internal matters. The other key question that we are asking is, will Trudeau government face probe for failing to act? Remember, the probe very clearly says that it was Trudeau government which did not respond to Canadian security concerns. And the last key question that we are putting out is that all this means that the next Prime Minister of Canada has a lot of work to do. And will he or she help reset ties between India and Canada? Let's put that out first and foremost to Brahma Chellaney, who's joining me on the broadcast. He's a strategic affairs expert. And we also have Dean Baxendale, who's a columnist, joining me from Canada on the show. Thanks much, gentlemen, for taking out the time. Mr. Chellaney, let me start with you, sir. There have been allegations, fresh allegations by Canada, again without any proof, and India has responded to that, saying it is the other way around. How do you see another low that India and Canada are seeing in their relationship?
First, we should keep in mind that the issue of foreign meddling in Canada's election process is a politically explosive issue in Canada, given that the China-supported candidates were mainly or largely with Trudeau's Liberal Party. In fact, in June, a separate report, a parliamentary intelligence committee said in its report that some members of parliament were witting or semi-witting participants in foreign meddling. In fact, the federal commissioner, inquiry commissioner, Ms. Hogue, who has submitted now the final report in May, in her interim report, she said that China stands out as the main perpetrator of such interference. So that's the background to this report. But in terms of how India has been interfering in Canada's internal affairs, the report doesn't detail evidence of how India has interfered in Canada's affairs. It seems to me that the references to India in the final report are more designed to ensure that China is not singled out as the sole perpetrator. They were trying to avoid the sole focus on China, so they brought in India, but they haven't backed up the allegations against India with any concrete evidence.
Let's put that out to Dean as well. Is that how it is? Really, that's the truth, that fact that it was China, and because Justin Trudeau shares a cozy relationship with Xi Jinping, he doesn't want to upset Xi Jinping. That's why he's also pointed out and included India falsely.
Well, of course, I thank you for having me on the program this morning, or this evening, I guess, in India. I think that, if we go back, a year and a half when the allegations were made by Justin Trudeau in Parliament regarding Indian officials or the government being involved potentially with the Niger assassination, it was clear that in part Trudeau was using the opportunity to deflect from his own inadequacies and closeness to Beijing that had been pointed out through countless articles, the book Willful Blindness, to which Optimum Publishing released in 2021, and ultimately was the reason behind the Hogue Commission. What Justice Hogue has done, and rightly, as your guest points out, is to deflect from Canada's high level of engagement with the PRC, and to deflect from, to make it appear as if India is somehow the lone and bad wolf in this process. Many governments are meddling in Canada's affairs, and India certainly has interests here in Canada to pursue to meet its own national objectives, as does any nation. But this kind of deflection by Hogue in now singling out India, we've expelled 6 Indian diplomats. We've only expelled 1 Chinese diplomat in the last, for the last 20 years. And this speaks to the fact that we're not interested really, or this Liberal government is not interested in addressing a serious interference, espionage operations inside Canada.
That's a very valid point you've made, Dean, that when it comes to, the fact that Canada is talking about India and China, but look at the difference in how it's really treating these two when it comes to quote-unquote foreign interference and meddling. Mr. Chellaney, which brings me to the point of the relationship. How do you see this relationship now from the nadir that it continues to hit under Justin Trudeau's leadership? How do you see, and what do you think would be the role of the next Prime Minister of Canada?
Canada and India are 2 leading democracies in the world. They should have very good relations. But under Trudeau, that relationship has come under increasing strain. Trudeau openly interfered in India's internal affairs during the farmers' agitation. Remember when he egged on the farmers who were blockading the highways to New Delhi? But when the truckers in Canada blockaded highways, he declared a national emergency to crush that peaceful movement. So he also exposed his double standards. But India's concern that has been expressed in the latest statement by the Foreign Ministry about how there is a nexus between illegal migration from Punjab and organized criminal activity was underlined by the way Niger, the terrorist who was killed in Canada, in British Columbia, Niger entered Canada illegally. And he's only one of many cases that India has pointed out over the years of how people from India's Punjab have been taken to Canada illegally, fostering a nexus between Canada-based Sikh separatists, the Khalistanis, and organized crime and drug syndicates operating in Canada. So this is an issue on which I think the two governments need to work together.
Indeed.
They need to have a working relationship on these issues, because this is also an issue that impinges on Canada's own internal security.
Indeed, indeed. Dean, come in on that, which is the fact that India has been very clear in terms of how Canada has been meddling in its affairs. The fact that several Khalistani extremists and several criminals have actually been allowed to get access into Canadian borders so easily completely undermines how India wants to deal with these criminals back home. That's the genesis of and the root cause of the problem.
It is indeed the root cause of this problem, and our intransigence towards this issue in addressing diaspora politics, where we have embraced and actually helped to further the interests of terrorist operations writ large, and those include those of Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas inside the country, are startling. What the U.S. threat of tariffs on Canada is about is exactly this nexus, where we have been the ecosystem for financing these operations in Canada. And for these terrorists around the world. So this is a deadly geopolitical issue that, that Canada needs to address, that its leadership needs to address. And if we don't, the United States is going to lay down the hammer on Canada and create a lot of problems for all of Canada.
Indeed. Thanks much, gentlemen. That's all the time I have on this discussion.